Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the MTRS Ready for Retirement online session during the holiday break. We're happy to have you with us today. We'll be hearing from two MTRS staff members today, Jennifer Prococo and Kaylee Hintland. They will be presenting this presentation for you today. We also have a number of people manning the chat room where you can chat with us by entering questions into the Q&A panel. If you look at your screen, either at the top or the bottom of the screen, there'll be a little voice bubble with a question mark in it that will let you open the Q&A panel. We do ask that you only limit it to general questions. Specific questions related to your account or your information cannot be answered during this presentation. We also ask, we will be covering a lot of topics today. We also ask that you try and limit questions to the topics that were on or have already been covered. We will select a number of questions during the presentation to read out loud for the benefit of everyone. And due to the high volume and the expected number of attendees, we cannot guarantee that every question will be answered, although we will try our best. And you can always, if for some reason your question was not answered today, you can always visit our website on the contact page to send in a specific question. I also want to take a moment to recognize one of our internal attendees today is our Executive Director, Erica Glaster. Today is her last day in the office after 38 years. Yes, you heard that correctly. 38 years at the MTRS. She's currently serving as our executive director and is retiring at the end of this year, and we're going to miss her a lot. She's been an inspiration to all of us, and we thank her for dedicating her career to helping Massachusetts educators. So thank you, Erica, and we wish you all the best in retirement, and we're looking forward to your chats today. So I'm going to hand it over to Jen now, and take it away.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Jennifer Prococo, and I am the Senior Benefits Supervisor here at the Teachers Retirement System. And like Scott said, Kaylee and I will be presenting the program today. So we just want to welcome you to the seminar and really just say thank you. We appreciate you taking the time out of your holiday break to come learn about your retirement. So before I get into it, I just have a couple quick notes that I want to mention. We just kind of wanted to say up front that we are aware of the pending Retirement Plus legislature, and we are monitoring this progress very closely. We do know that today is the last day of the legislative session, and we will be monitoring that closely, and we'll let you know of any updates as soon as we receive them. And also, we are aware of the Social Security repeal for the WEP and the GPO. We know right now it's just waiting to be signed by the president. So again, once we have any updates on that, we will communicate it with you, and we'll definitely put something up on our website. So we just wanted to kind of mention that up front because we know that could be a question on all of your minds today. But we are here to talk about retirement, which is a great and exciting topic to discuss, and we do have a lot of ground to cover. So I just wanted to kind of go over a quick overview before we get into it. So this program is broken into 3 parts. I will be taking you through different pre-retirement issues, different things that you need to consider now before you retire. And Kaylee and I will walk you through the actual retirement process. So we're going to walk you through step by step of the retirement application and let you know, different things that you need to expect along the way and when. And then Kaylee will also be taking you through other retirement issues and just other topics and items that you need to be aware of as you approach retirement. And like Scott mentioned, we will have different breaks in today's program where we will answer a few different questions that come up in the chats. So first of all, what is the MTRS? Well, we are your retirement plan, and we are defined under Chapter 401, Section 401A of the Internal Revenue Code. And your benefit is based on a set formula using your age, your years of service, and your salary. And the great thing about your benefit is that it's guaranteed for life. It is paid monthly for life. It's never going to go down and may actually only increase with future cost of living adjustments, which is great. We will get into that a bit later as well. So fluctuations in the financial markets do not affect the amount of your benefit. This pension fund is invested in a well-diversified portfolio with a focus on long-term returns. So back in 2012, we had Pension Reform 3, which created a new benefit structure for some of our members that started in any Massachusetts public retirement system on or after April 2nd, 2012. So now because of that, your benefits are now based on your start date in a Massachusetts public retirement system, and we distinguish those by tiers. So we have our Tier 1 members who began in a Massachusetts public retirement system before April 2nd, 2012. And then we also have our Tier 2 members who started on or after April 2nd, 2012. I do just want to pause briefly and let you know later on when I get into some different retirement calculation examples. Those examples are not Tier 2, they are Tier 1 examples. I will briefly right now just go over the three main differences between the two. First of all, when you go to retire, there's an age factor that's assigned to your age. The age factors for our Tier 2 members are lower. Also, as a Tier 1 member, you can retire with at age 55 with 10 years of service, or with 20 years at any age. For our Tier 2 members, they have to have at least 10 years of service and be 60 before they're eligible to retire. And the biggest main difference between the two tiers is the last main big difference between the two tiers is that for our Tier 1 members, we use a 3-year salary average. And for our Tier 2 members, we use a 5-year salary average. So again, when I get into those examples, you'll see they're for Tier 1 and not Tier 2. All right, so one of the things that we do here at the Teachers Retirement System is we look at your earnings that you get paid every school year. And some of those earnings are included, meaning that we want to receive a retirement deduction on them, and they can be used in the calculation of your final salary average. So everything on the left-hand side of the slide can be used in the calculation of your final salary average, and everything on the right-hand side cannot be. So I'm just going to go through them one by one. First one is your annual base salary pursuant to your collective bargaining agreement or your individual contract. So if you're a teacher, this is usually under a step and scale, or if you're an administrator, your salary should be listed somewhere in your contract. Next bullet point down is regular longevity. So this is the amount of money that your district may offer you, and it's tied to length of service within that district. It is eligible, but it does have to be listed in your contract. Next one down is athletic coaching. So athletic coaching it is actually always pensionable. And that is because it's written directly into Chapter 32. You do have to be directly instructing the sport. So you need to be football coach, hockey coach, baseball coach, something like that. As long as you're directly instructing the sport, it doesn't necessarily have to be written into your contract for it to be pensionable. And the last bullet point down here on the left-hand side of the slide is annual payments for additional services pursuant to your collective bargaining agreement. So these here are just your stipends. So mentor, yearbook advisor, drama club, any of those items are pensionable. But again, the duty, so the stipend that you're working and the dollar amount to be paid for that stipend do need to be listed in your collective bargaining agreement. So all of these items are eligible. Again, that means we do want to get that retirement deduction, and we can use all of those items in the calculation of your final salary average. Moving over to the right-hand side of the slide, these are excluded. So these are monies that you can receive, but we don't want that deduction, and we cannot use them in the calculation of your benefit. First one is amounts paid to due to your employer's knowledge of retirement, and this would be a retirement incentive, and of course you can accept that, but it's not pensionable. Next two down are sick leave buyback and unused vacation time. Again, you can definitely receive any monies due back to you by the district, but they're not pensionable. Next one down is hourly payments, and hourly payments are always excluded with two exceptions. The first one being athletic coaching. As I already mentioned, this is written directly into Chapter 32. So if you are instructing a sport, an hourly payment would be eligible. And the only other hourly payment that's pensionable is breakfast and lunch duty. So if you work breakfast and lunch duty within your district, as long as you are physically in the space with the students, that would also be eligible. That's also written directly into the law. But with those are the only two exceptions. Other than that, hourly payments are always excluded. Next one down, we have temporary salary augmentations. This would be a bonus. Again, something you can accept, but nothing that would be pensionable on our end. And last but not least, we have annuities and fringe benefits. These were pretty much phased out through pension reform, but they are also not pensionable. All right, this slide it's a newer slide that we added in. We just wanted to kind of make note that if you've logged into your MyTRS account, you may have noticed a delay in your retirement contributions and creditable service. And we want to let you know that progress is being made on that delay. That will not impact your retirement in any way. So your contributions are every month are sent to the MTRS from your district. And they are securely recorded in our system, but all the service needs to be validated by our employer services unit before we can release that service into your member self-service portal. So rest assured, just because you don't see it doesn't mean it's not there. It's just we need to go through and validate it and make sure that everything is correct before we actually release it into your account. So again, this will not impact or delay your retirement benefit in any way. We do have that money. It's just not yet released into your account. Once it is, you will see both the deductions and the creditable service released into your account. Okay, so we've talked about service that you make an MTRS retirement contribution on, but I want to switch gears on this slide and talk a little bit about purchasing service. So what does that mean? Since your benefit is based on a formula that's made up of your years of service, you could potentially buy back additional years to add to your service on file with the teacher's retirement system. And there's a few different ways that you can do that listed on this slide, and I'm going to go through them one by one. The top half of this slide is billed at the actuarial rate. This is a fluctuating rate, and it's been 7% for the last couple of years. So the top half of the slide is billed at 7%, and I'll get into that. So the first way that you could purchase service would be a refund buyback. If you were previously a member of the MTRS or one of the other Massachusetts public retirement systems and took your money out, you can apply to buy that time back and add it back into your account. We have other Massachusetts state or municipal employment. An example of this would be a lifeguard at a local pool, a professor at a state college, or a clerk for a Massachusetts city or town. Again, you would have to have been paid with public funds, so public employment within the state of Massachusetts. The next bullet point down here is Massachusetts substitute or temporary teaching. So this is definitely our most popular service purchase, given that a lot of our members have had some substitute service time prior to becoming a member in our system. So maybe you were a long-term sub or a part-time teacher working less than 50%, or maybe you have some day-to-day subbing with a few different districts. Any of those types of service you would put on the Massachusetts substitute form. Next bullet point down here, we have out-of-state public school teaching. So if eligible, you can purchase up to 10 years if you were teaching in another state. You would have to have met the same eligibility criteria that our members meet, meaning you had to have been 50% or greater, certified and working in a position that required that certification. And this is the only application that we have that actually has 3 parts. So all of the different service purchase applications that I'm talking about right now have 2 parts. So one part that you fill out and one part that you send over to your former employer to fill out. But the out-of-state application actually has a 3rd part where we ask you to go back to your former public retirement system. And that's because you cannot be getting a benefit in that state and this state at the same time. So that form actually does have that 3rd part that you need to go back to your former state. Next one down here, we have non-public school teaching. I haven't seen one of these in at least 10 years, as the service would have to have been rendered before 1973. So very hard date to beat these days. Next one down here is Department of Defense oversees dependent school teaching. Along with the application here, you would need to submit your federal transcript that that verifies your service for that. And then moving down to the bottom half of the slide here, these are more service purchases and they're billed at the buyback rate. So the buyback rate is always half of the actuarial. So currently right now, the interest that's billed for the next 4 service purchases that I'm going to talk about is 3.5%. First one down here is military service. Along with the application, you need to submit your DD 214. You do need to meet the Massachusetts general law definition of a veteran, and you can purchase back up to 4 years of your military service. Next bullet point down here is non-public school teaching in a Massachusetts publicly funded school. This particular purchase has a lot of requirements. It's a lengthy service purchase. You would have had to have been engaged in teaching pupils in one of these non-public schools here. Next one down is vocational education. So teachers who teach or have taught a trade in a Chapter 74 approved program can apply to buy back up to 3 years of the experience that they used to get their vocational teaching license from the Department of Education. And last but not least on this slide, we have Peace Corps service. Similarly to VOC, you can purchase up to 3 years, and along with the application, you do need to submit certification that you participated in the Peace Corps. Just a couple important reminders on this slide. Whenever you see that little hand pop up with the ribbon, that's an important reminder for you. So in order to purchase any service, you do need to be active at the time that you apply. You need to be actively teaching. The only exception to that would be Peace Corps and refund buyback. Every other service purchase that I just mentioned, you need to be active at the time that you apply. All your service purchases do need to be paid in full prior to your date of retirement. So if you have anything that you might be thinking of, looking into, it might be a good idea to do that now while you're still active in our system. And late payments will postpone your retirement and could possibly delay your first check. So we always say complete your service purchases now while you're still active. If you've rendered any past creditable service, investigate that now so that you can see what the cost is, what the credit is, if it's even eligible. You are under no obligation to purchase any invoice that we send you, but it is definitely worth looking into seeing if it's worth it for you to purchase any additional service that you have. Again, all service purchases must be paid in full prior to your retirement date. And please remember, if you're paying with a rollover, it's going to take time. You're going to need to start as soon as you get that invoice and follow up with your financial institution and confirm the transfer. You want to make sure we actually received the money. Late payments, again, they're going to postpone your date of retirement, could potentially postpone your first check. And if you are planning on retiring and you know that you're currently on one of our installment plans, our 5-year payment plans, when you're planning on retiring, you can give us a call at any time and we can calculate a buyout cost for you. So how do you apply to purchase service? Very easy. First, you're going to go to our website, mass.gov/MTRS, and you're going to go to forms and you can download the applicable service purchase for what you're planning on applying for. And like I said, most applications have 2 parts, part 1 for you to fill out, part 2 for your former employer to fill out. They are nice interactive PDFs. So what that means is you can save the application right to your desktop, fill in your name, member number, social, all of those things, and hand the entire application over to your former employer's payroll office, where they will hopefully be able to give us the information that we need to determine if your service is eligible, and if it is, what the credit and cost associated with that service purchase will be. So the way that most of these service purchases are calculated is that we take your earnings in each calendar year and we multiply your earnings by what your MTRS contribution rate would have been at that time. From there, we add the interest on, so that 7% or that 3.5%, all the way up until the service purchase is paid for in full. That is how most of the service purchases are calculated, with the exception of vocational and military. Those are a little bit different, and those calculations are available right on the applications themselves. So if we have enough information to determine that the service is eligible, we're going to send you an invoice and you can choose to pay by personal check, roll over from an eligible plan, and we do offer that 5-year installment plan. We have rollover forms available for you right on our website, and later on, Kaylee is going to get into how we track both your pre-tax and after-tax payments. Now for some questions.
Okay, we don't have any published questions in the chat. Our team of MTRS staff is staying on top of the questions. I do have one announcement to make. The email that that we sent to recognize your registration, the link to the program was not working. And I put that in the chat. I do apologize for that. So in the chat and the Q&A, there's a link to the booklet that we're walking through.
Oh yes, the PDF.
I do actually have a question just came in. I did long-term subbing in the 90s. I filled out the form and sent it to the district about 5 years ago, and they digitized their records and don't have any proof of my employment anymore. What do I do now so I can buy it back?
Okay, the first thing I would do is fill out part 1, and you're going to need your former district to let you know in writing. We would like it on part 2 or in some kind of letter, signed letter from them that they have no records. That would be the first thing you'd want to do. We need confirmation from them that they don't have any records of your employment. If you happen to have any W-2s, you can send those in with the application. If not, I would start there and at least send us part 1 filled out to the best of your ability, and make sure that your former district can at least tell us in writing that they have no other information. And from there, we can kind of help you. Each case is a little bit different, so we can try to help you, you know, see if we can get that rest of the information that we need to complete the application for you.
Okay. Next one. When will my service prior to 2010 show up on my creditable service estimate sheet?
Okay, so for your service before 2010, that is the year that we got a new system. So none of the service before 2010 is in anybody's account until we manually go in and add it for you. So you can, if you want, you can go on our website right where the forms are, mass.gov/MTRS. You can go there and submit a request for creditable service. Again, once your service is validated by one of us manually, we will enter that into your account.
Next question. I work an extended day at a level 4 school. That is included in retirement, correct?
As long as, so that's a tricky question because it depends on the district and what the contract says. But if you work in an extended day program, usually as long as it's in your contract, it should be okay. You can always call us or call your payroll office and they can have the contract reviewed with one of our representatives here to make sure it's pensionable. But usually as long as that extended day program is somewhere in your contract, it should be okay. But I would recommend calling first and having someone review it to confirm.
2 more questions. If it says in the contract that the 6 extra days counselors work is at their per diem rate, how will the MTRS handle that?
Okay, this is similar to how I just answered the last question. When it comes to extra days, it really boils down to how it's written in your contract. Those days have to be mandatory. It has to be written into the contract that you are required to work those days. So sometimes it's not always clear as day in the contract. So you're going to want to make sure when you look at your contract that it says 6 days are required every summer, something like that. If it's variable in any way, meaning you only work 5 1 year or something like that, is a potentially not eligible. So that would be another reason, you know, you're going to want to make sure that it's okay in your contract. You could always give us a call and we can review the contract and, you know, make sure it looks okay.
So I got 2 more.
Okay.
Why are some of my full FTEs showing less than 1 on my credible service report.
Okay. If you were 100% and it's showing less, and does it say if it's after 2010? It must. It must be after 2010. There's different reasons why your after 2000, your post 2010 service may look off. So if it's saying something like 0.97 or 0.96 or something like that, it's possible that how it's just being reported to us, maybe that last August pay is showing up in the next school year, cutting that year short. So the report is always going to cap it at a year. So if one of your pays out of 26 or 24 is showing up, is just coming into us at a time where it's looking, the system is thinking it's the next year, it's going to make the prior year look short. So again, if you're seeing that, you can always go on our website and download request a creditable service. We have a form for that. You can do that, and we can go ahead and review your years of service and try to fix that if that's the issue.
Okay. Last one for now. Can I pay for my invoice for buyback with partial rollover and partial payment with a check?
Yep, you can do that. So you could do a rollover, make sure you know what that rollover amount is, and pay the difference with a personal check.
Great. That's it for now.
All right. Moving on here to some more pre-retirement issues. As I mentioned before, we do have 2 different retirement plans, 2 different sets of criteria here. So for the regular benefit for our Tier 1 members, to be eligible to retire, you can have at least 20 years of service to retire at any age, or be at least 55 years old and have at least 10 years of creditable service before you're eligible to retire. As I mentioned before, this is for Tier 1. Tier 2 members have to have at least 10 years of service and be age 60 before they're eligible to retire. Next bullet point down here is Retirement Plus. So there are a few different ways currently that our members can participate in Retirement Plus. The first would be if you were a member before 2001, you would have received an election. And if you started contributing on or after July 1st of 2001, you'd be mandated into Retirement Plus. So that means you're contributing a flat 11% rate. But Retirement Plus is an enhanced benefit. It enhances your retirement. And what's really important to know here is that in order to be eligible for that enhancement, you have to have at least 30 years of service, 20 of which must be membership with the MTRS or the Boston Retirement Board as a teacher. And once you meet these 2 retirement requirements, the enhanced benefits start. So at 30 years, you're going to receive an additional 12% added onto your base percentage. And from there, an additional 2% for each full year up to a max benefit at 80%. So your benefit is capped at 80%. We do have 3 different retirement options. So later on, when we get into the retirement application, there is a page that's designated for you to pick the option. There's 3, A, B, and C. And it is a personal choice. Everybody has a different life situation or circumstance. So you're going to want to take some time and pick the option that's best for you and your family and your situation. So I'm going to go through the different options for you and let you know kind of the pros and cons of each option. So the first option is A. This is our most popular choice. It is the greatest benefit that you can receive. It's your maximum allowance. But should you pass away, there is no survivor benefit or any type of benefit for anyone. The benefit stops upon your passing. We have option B. Option B is approximately 1 to 3% less than option A. And this is actually the only option where your annuity savings account comes into play. So should you pass away, whatever's left in your personal annuity savings account here can be left to a beneficiary or multiple beneficiaries in a one-time lump sum payment. But what's important to know is when you retire, every time you get paid once a month at the end of the month, some of your money is coming directly from the state of Massachusetts, about 80%, and then 20% is coming directly out of your own annuity savings account. So after about 10 years, your annuity savings account has depleted itself. It's down to zero, but you're still getting your full benefit because the state picks up the rest of your benefit. So you don't kind of see that as kind of behind the scenes, but what's important to know is that should you live longer than about 10 years, there's nothing to leave now to your beneficiaries. And you took a 1 to 3% reduction from A, and we all want to live longer than 10 years after retirement. So a lot of people do look at it like a short-term life insurance policy. But again, it's the benefit is whatever's left in your own annuity savings account. And in about 10 years, that depletes itself. Option C is our second most popular option, and it's reduced by about 9 to 11%. And that reduction depends on your age at retirement and your beneficiary's closest age at retirement. So when you go to retire, under C, you need to pick that beneficiary up front. That person does have to be directly related to you, parent, child, sibling, spouse, or ex-spouse. Not a popular option. And should you pass away, that person that you picked, that direct family member that you picked, can receive up to 2/3 of whatever you were getting in retirement. Now, the 9 to 11% is really based on you picking someone around your age. So maybe a spouse or a sibling, someone around your age. But if you go to pick a child or someone that's a lot younger than you, that reduction is greater. It might be upwards of 20%. But again, whoever you pick that's directly related to you, parent, child, sibling, spouse, or ex-spouse, will receive 2/3 of whatever you were getting in retirement. And should they predecease you, we have a pop-up provision where you will pop up to option A as of their date of death. So those are the three options. Again, they all have some pros and cons. And in order to, figure out your B and C, we always have to figure out A first. So here I'm going to just quickly go over the actual retirement calculation formula. So as I said, every age has an age factor assigned to it. Your age at retirement, we take that age factor and we multiply it by your years of creditable service. That's going to give us your retirement percentage. If you're in retirement plus, here's where we would add on that additional retirement plus percentage. That's going to give us your total retirement percentage. It's maxed at 80%. Okay, so from there, we're going to take your salary average, your highest 3 consecutive years if you're tier 1, and multiply it by that percentage. And that's going to give us your option A allowance. If you're a veteran, here's where we would add in that veterans bonus. And that would be your total option A for our tier 1 members. Now here's an example of Mary Educator. Mary is so excited. She's going to retire this coming June. She's going to be 59. Mary has 35 years of service at the end of the school year. So the age factor for our tier 1 members at 59 is 0.019. Multiply that by her 35 years, and Mary has a base percentage of 66.5%. Mary's not in retirement plus, so that is her percentage. We take that 66.5% and we multiply it by Mary's highest 3 consecutive years, her salary average of $75,000. And Mary's option A annual benefit is $49,875 a year. If Mary was a veteran, we could add on an additional veterans bonus here. She's not. So Mary's total A allowance is $49,875 a year, or $4,156 a month. Tom is also very excited to retire this coming June. He is a year younger than Mary at age 58. So the age factor for 58 is 0.018, and Tom has 34.5 years of service. So 0.018 times 34.5 gives Tom a base percentage of 62.1%. Tom is in retirement plus though, so we can actually add on an additional 20% onto his base percentage. But you have to remember that percentage is capped at 80%. So we can't add the whole 20% onto his base percentage. It's going to be capped at that 80%. So 80% of Tom's salary average of $75,000 gives Tom an A annual benefit of $60,000 a year. Tom's a veteran, so here's where we're going to add on that veteran's bonus of $300. So Tom's option A annual allowance is $60,300 a year, or $5,025 a month. So in retirement, you are paid once a month at the end of the month for that month. And we always have to figure out A before we can figure out B and C. Another really important, very important pre-retirement issue is for you to plan for your health insurance coverage. Okay, so we here at the Teachers Retirement System do not oversee your health insurance in any way, but we do have some tips for you to avoid any surprises at retirement. So if you are following along in the PDF booklet that I think Scott said they threw down in the chat for you guys, or on our website, you're going to see a checklist. And you're going to see that about a year before retirement, you're going to want to contact your local health insurance coordinator. Now, this person might be down in your payroll office at your school. They could be down at town hall or city hall. You could start with payroll. They should be able to direct you to this local health insurance coordinator. You're going to want to start there. If you take a look at the bottom of the slide, you're going to see that the MTRS you can arrange to have your premiums withheld from your check. But that's the only control that we have on your health insurance. It's a local benefit. We don't administer it. So you really need to start with your district or city or town. There's two ways that you can get retiree health insurance. It's going to either be through the Group Insurance Commission, the GIC, or directly through your city or town that you work in. So within the GIC, there's two ways that a retiree can receive insurance health benefits. The first would be if your city or town participates in the Retirement Municipal Teachers Program, the RMT. In the booklet, we do have a list of the districts that we know that participate in the RMT. And really what that means is you're going to receive health insurance through the GIC at the RMT rates. And from what we know, GIC pays about 80% and the retiree is responsible for about 20%. If your district isn't in the booklet and you know you're in the GIC as an active teacher, you will probably have health insurance through the GIC municipality program. And what's important to know here is that the plan, really what's important to know no matter how you're getting insurance, is that the plan that's offered to you right now as an active employee may change or may not be offered to you as a retiree. So it's at least important to, get a look on that now so you can see if your coverage is going to change as a retiree. Maybe you need to get a different plan. Another important thing that you're going to want to look into is survivor insurance. Should something happen to you, will your survivor have coverage? Another thing that you really want to think about is if you were to switch districts, just in general, will your district even offer you health insurance? So we have seen or heard of situations here where a person switches districts, a couple of years before retirement. They go to retire and the district turns around and says, I'm sorry, you need to have at least 5 years before we offer you health insurance. So again, we can't tell you which districts offer which plans and what their protocols may be for administering the benefit, but it just might be something that you might want to look into if you were thinking of switching districts. These would be really important questions to ask, things to think about. If you don't have health insurance through the GIC, again, you're probably going to have it through your city or town. Same questions you need to be asking. You still need to contact that local health insurance coordinator. Talking about Medicare, finding out about Medicare and how it impacts your health insurance, we do know that there is 3 different ways that you can qualify. The first would be if you qualify for a Social Security benefit, you'd qualify for Medicare. If you're married to someone who's eligible for Medicare, you would qualify through your spouse. And the last way that we know of is if you changed employers or started teaching after April 1st of 1986, you've been paying a 1.45% Medicare tax. If you've been paying that tax for 10 or more years, that would make you Medicare eligible. So if you do qualify, you're going to want to look into supplemental insurance, Medigap. It covers things that Medicare usually doesn't, and it's usually offered the same way as retiree health insurance. So again, that same local health insurance coordinator that I talked about a couple minutes ago, you're going to want to start there with that person. Last important thing on the slide is to avoid any penalties before your 65th birthday. You're going to want to contact Social Security to determine your eligibility for Medicare and when you would need to apply for Part B. So Part B covers things like general care and doctor's appointments. And we know that if you don't apply by your 65th birthday, there is a 10% surcharge. So the only exception to that would be is if you're 65 or older and you're still currently employed, you would just need to contact them before you retire. Okay.
All right.
Questions?
Got a couple of questions here. What happens if you signed up for Retirement Plus, but don't stay in for 20 years? What happens to the money that was deducted?
All right. So if you elected to participate in Retirement Plus, meaning you received an election in the mail and you said yes. If you elected, that's the key, and you don't meet the eligibility criteria, you will receive a refund of the difference in your contribution rate from 11% to whatever it was before you elected in. That changes if you're mandated to participate in Retirement Plus. So if you started after July of 2001, 11% is just your rate. So at that point, there would be no refund for you. But if you are a person that elected in and you don't meet the criteria that I mentioned, 30 years total, 20 of membership with the MTRS or the Boston Retirement Board as a teacher. If you elect in and you don't meet those criterias, you would receive a refund.
Right. How do I find out if I'm in Retirement Plus?
Okay, if you have a member self-service portal, which you can sign up for right on our website, it should be listed on there. You will see it saying participating or not. You can also always give us a call and we can take a look at your account for you and see what it says.
Okay. This next question, I'll just read it here. The retirement account balance goes to your beneficiary prior to retiring, correct?
Say that one more time for me.
The retirement account balance goes to your beneficiary prior to retiring, correct?
No, so I'm thinking you're thinking of option B, where the whatever's in your account would be left to a beneficiary, but that only happens when you pass away. So if there's anything left in your annuity savings account and you chose option B, if there's any money left in your account at your date of death, that is what would be given to your beneficiary. I hope I answered that.
Regarding the salary average, do you use the contract scales or do you use your W-2?
We'd use your contract. So say you had a contract to earn $75,000 a year. That's what we would use in the calculation of your salary average. So it's not by calendar year, it's by your school year, your contracted work year. And it could be your base salary plus any stipends or longevity, things like that, that I mentioned on that slide. So 3 total years of that.
Regarding creditable service and the purchase of it, can both Tier 1 and Tier 2 educators purchase creditable service?
Yep, that has no bearing on purchasing service.
Okay. Is it true that if you were eligible to retire, but chose not to take your pension right away, would your age continue to go up, but not your years of service?
Yep, so say you are 50 years old and you said, I'm done working, you can defer your benefit till later. So the max age factor for Tier 1 is 65. So you can delay your benefit, till you get to a higher age factor if you like. But after age 65, your age factor won't increase. Your years of service and salary average would stay the same if you stopped working. So the only thing that would increase would be your age factor.
Does workers' comp time affect years of creditable service?
That's a tricky one. It depends on a few things. If you have workers' comp, it might not be a bad idea to request a creditable service letter. But in general, if you're fully incapacitated, I believe you get full service credit. But again, that's kind of depends on a lot of different things. So that if you have workers' comp, it might not be a bad idea to get your years of service reviewed.
Two more. If I pulled all my funds out of another state teacher's retirement system, 2 years in Virginia, would I still be eligible to purchase those 2 years of creditable service with the MTRS?
Yes, so it depends on a few things before we can actually determine if the service is eligible. But if it is and you pulled that money out, that's fine. You can still, maybe you put it in, maybe you rolled it into another plan. That's totally fine. You could, then roll that over to pay for it here at the teacher's retirement system, or you can use a personal check. But taking the money out, we would ask you to take it out anyways if it was eligible. If this money was still in Virginia and we determined it was eligible, we're actually going to ask you to take it out and confirm that you took it out. So that's fine.
Okay, last one for now. How do I access the MyTRS portal?
Okay, so on our website, I don't know exactly where it is. I think if you scroll down, it's somewhere at the bottom, at the top.
Right.
It's at the top right. You can go and sign up. You're going to need, I believe, your social, right? And we're going to offer you two-factor authentication, I believe. So once you have an account, you have to confirm a couple things before you log in, and then you'll be able to see your years of service. Again, if it's not in there before 2010, it doesn't mean we don't have it. It just hasn't been validated yet.
Great. That's it for now.
Okay. Okay. So now I'm into part 2, where I'm going to kind of start going over the actual retirement application process with you. We do have some recommended steps that you go through before you actually complete the retirement application. And the first step would be on our website, go to mass.gov/MTRS, and you can actually, you'll be able to review, estimate your benefit, review any issues, download the form. So we would recommend that you do that about 6 months before you're planning to retire. About 5 months before, we would recommend you have your part 1 completed. That's the part that I'm about to go over with you, your part. You're going to want to gather some required documents that I'll talk about, and you're going to want to give part 2 over to your payroll office to complete. And then by 4 months before your retirement date, you should have that part 2 back from payroll. And you're going to want to submit part 1, part 2, and all those requirement documents to the MTRS. If you can get it into us 4 months before your date of retirement, we like to hope that we can get you your retirement check on time. So the earlier you can get it to us, the better, and the earliest we can receive it is 4 months before your retirement date. Now, we always recommend, this is a really helpful step to people. So on our website at the top there, you can browse by career stage, and you're going to want to click Estimate My Retirement Benefits. That's going to bring up a calculator for you. You have to designate if you're Tier 1 or Tier 2. Accept the terms and conditions or agree to the form. And there you can, it's just a very basic calculator where you can put in what you think your years of service are, what you think your salary average is going to be, your age. You can run option B and C calculations on here. It just gives you a nice general idea of what your benefit is going to look like. Again, it's nothing professional, but it's a great tool to use. And once you've done that, you're going to want to click Ready to Retire. And then under step 1, you're going to let the system know that you understand the retirement formula and process. Also, right above that button at the bottom where the red arrow is, you'll see a couple different videos on there. I always recommend checking those out, especially if you have a colleague or coworker that couldn't come to the seminar today. Those are nice, helpful videos. They're short, that kind of walk you through kind of some of the stuff that I'm talking about right now. And from there, you can click Ready to Retire. And it's going to bring up the page for you to download the application at the bottom there. And once you download it, you're going to get the application. Now, I'm going to be going through the application half page by half page. This is only, you can see this looks really small on here. You probably can't even read it. But all I really want to make note of on this page, so this is the full very first page of the application, and that red box in the middle is all I really want to touch on. And it basically just says you have 60 days after your date of separation from your district to apply. So I mentioned we can receive it up to 4 months in advance. You also have 60 days after your date of separation to get it into us. So for example, say the end of the school year rolls around and you have every intention of going back in September, but then it's mid-July and you're like, I think I'm ready to retire. You have until August 29th, so 60 days from June 30th, to submit your application and retain the right to that June 30th date. If we receive your application after 60 days of separation has passed, we by law have to move your retirement date 15 days into the future, which results in lost pension income. So if we didn't get your application till September 1st, you're going to lose out on all of July, all of August, and half of September's pay. So just keep in mind that we want to receive your application within 60 days of separation from your district. Like I said, I'm going to go through the rest of the application half page by half page so you can really hone in on the details of each page here. It looks very daunting. It's a long application, but I promise it's really not that bad when you start looking at it. So if you are following along with me, or in the booklet, you might see the entire page, but like I said, here we're going half page by half page. So we need to know the type of retirement, regular or retirement plus. We need to know if you were involuntarily terminated as well. And then you'll see letters B and C here is your intended date of retirement and your last date of employment. Now, if you're going out at the end of June, these 2 days might be the same. But what's important to know is even if your last date of employment is, say, June 15th or June 20th, by law, your retirement date is June 30th. So your last date of employment might say June 20th, but your intended date of retirement by law still has to be June 30th. That's one reason these two dates could be different. Another reason these two dates could be different is maybe you have a summer birthday. Maybe your birthday is July 10th and you want to retire on your birthday to get that higher age factor. You would want to retire on your actual birthday, not the day before or the day after. Your actual birthday would then be your retirement date. And last but not least, the bottom letter here, letter D, have you applied for a disability retirement? We just want to know because you can also apply for a regular benefit while you're waiting for that disability retirement to be processed. Okay, the bottom half of the first page here is just more basic demographic information, your social, your member number, your name. If you have a maiden name or a former name, we would need to know that. Your birthday, we would like to know if you're a veteran. We need your address, your contact phone numbers, and your email. We do ask for your personal email because we know that a lot of times as soon as you stop working, the district shuts off your work email. And we want to be able to contact you still. So please give us your personal email. You're also going to notice over on the left-hand side, we start to make note of things. You'll see some different notes on the left-hand side of the application. So first, we cannot accept a fax, a copy, or an email. We need the whole entire actual original application. I always say make a copy for yourself before you send it in to us, but we need the original. There's wet signatures coming up and it has to be an original application. You're also going to see the different required documents that we're going to start to ask you for. So if you've had a name change, if you got married or changed your name, we need a copy of that name change document. Could be a marriage certificate if you got married and changed your last name. We also need a certified copy of your birth certificate. Cannot be a photocopy. We need that certified copy with a raised seal from the city or town that you were born in. We will give that back to you, but we do need to see the original. If you are in the military, we do need your military discharge form, your DD-214. This is the top of page 2. There's more information here. So letter K how many districts are you currently employed with? This is usually one, but there are certain instances where somebody may be in 2 districts at the same time. Maybe you're teaching in one and coaching in the other. We would need to know that. Letter I, are you now or were you at any time after January 1, 2010 employed by more than one Massachusetts city or town, state or regional authority? We would need to know that as well. You could be in 2 retirement systems at the same time, so that would be really helpful if you could give us that information to help you help us calculate your benefit. Letter M is rare, but what can happen is if you and your spouse were both members of a Massachusetts public retirement system as of November 1st, 2003, what we could do is if you are under age 55 and your spouse is already retired, you could actually be bumped up to age 55. It's called special spousal. You could retire 1 day after your spouse. Very rare, but it does happen. So, read through that quickly. And if it applies to you, please let us know. In the bottom of page 2, more information here. We need to know your expected marital status as of your date of retirement. We need to know your spouse's name if they have a different address than you. We need to know if you've ever been divorced, and we need to know if there is a domestic relations order. Hopefully, if you have one, it's something we've already seen here at the MTRS, but if you do have one, you need to make sure that we have a copy of it and that it's been signed and approved. So if you have one, again, please make sure that's all set before you go to retire to avoid any headaches. And letter S, if you have a different address, sometimes our members may move to Cape Cod for the summer or Maine, or maybe down to Florida for the winter. Please let us know so that we have the best way to contact you and send you your notice of estimated retirement benefits. We want to be able to contact you. So please let us know if you have an alternate or temporary address coming up in the future, closer to retirement. And letter T is often missed. It's, have you ever been convicted of a criminal offense involving your Massachusetts public employment? Again, I think as it's at the bottom of the page, it often just gets unchecked, and we will have to send your entire application back to you if you don't fill this out. So to avoid, the slowing down of the process of your benefit, please make sure that you answer that question. The top of page 3 here is where we're just asking you to let us know what you think your highest 3 consecutive years are for your salary average. So again, 9 times out of 10, this is going to be your last 3 years, but there are reasons why somebody's highest 3 consecutive years could fall elsewhere in their career. Maybe you were coaching 5 years ago and your salary was higher then than it is now. Maybe you were an administrator and stepped back down to teaching. There's different reasons why someone's salary average might not be their last 3 years. So this is a place for you to just confirm that it's your last 3 years, or indicate to us that we should be looking elsewhere in your career for your highest 3 consecutive years. The bottom half of page 3 here, we're just asking you what kind of contract you have, individual, or are you under a collective bargaining agreement? We're asking you if your contract is settled. If it's not, we can still retire you under how they're paying you now, but it is up to you to let us know when the contract is settled so that we can go back and adjust your benefit. Now, this is the first wet signature out of quite a few throughout the application. So again, it has to be a wet signature with a pen. And definitely make sure that every page that has a signature and date is completed, or we will have to send it back to you. Top of page 4, we're just looking for a basic idea of what your years of service look like. So here, every single person in this chat today is going to have the top one, regular Massachusetts Public Teaching Service. That's how you are eligible to retire with us. Everything below that is a service purchase or a leave of absence. So we're just asking you to give us an idea of what you have. Again, doesn't have to be perfect, but we need you to fill this out to the best of your ability, because we want to make sure that your benefit's right. We want to make sure that we're on the same page as you. So the bottom half of this page, again, we're just looking for an idea of what your years of service are. We just ask you to fill this out to the best of your ability so that when we go to process your benefit, if you say you have 33.4 years, we also see around 33.4 years. You know, if it's drastically less, that would be an opportunity for us to take a look at this page and say, oh, you know, we don't have that leave of absence or that out-of-state Vermont time. And we can have a conversation and, you know, see where we're differing on the years of service. So it's really just an opportunity to make sure we're on the same page. Page 5 is kind of a continuation of page 4. Here, we're just looking for you to document any leaves that you may have. Maybe you were on a sabbatical or a maternity leave. It'd be so helpful to us if you could document that so that, you know, if we see any gaps in your service, it gives us an indication as to why. And the bottom half of this page, again, a continuation. Sometimes the entire page 5 is blank if you've never had a leave. Here would be where we are asking if you've ever had any workers' compensation and how you were paid under Section 34 or 35. And any military service. If you've ever had any military leaves, we would ask you to document that as well for us. And that brings me to the end of my part of the program. I'm going to pass the rest of part 1 of the application over to Kaylee. She's going to talk about direct deposit. Thank you, everybody. Have a great afternoon or morning.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kaylee Hintlian. I'm a senior retirement specialist at the MTRS. I will be bringing you through the remainder of part 1 of the application, and then we're going to discuss some post-retirement issues that you all should be aware of. So page 6 is the direct deposit page. Up at the top here, you're going to indicate whether you're going to have your monthly pension payment directly deposited into a checking or savings account. I should also note that by law, you are mandated to have your monthly pension payments directly deposited. If you are choosing a checking account, you're going to attach a voided check to this page. If you are having your payment directly deposited into a savings account, you need to attach an additional verification from the bank that is signed by an employee of the bank, and it should contain your name, your address, the bank name, the bank routing number, your account number, and attach that to the sheet. The next question underneath asks if you are having your payments directly deposited into a U.S. bank account and then forwarded to a foreign bank account. This question is often missed for whatever reason, or people don't think it applies to them, so they just don't answer. This question is very important. This page will be deemed incomplete if that is not answered, and this page will be sent back. So please make sure that you're not skipping that question. And then we're going to ask you to indicate what type of account you have. So whether it's an individual account with just your name on the account, whether it's a joint account, or whether it's a trust. And if it is a trust, you're going to need to attach a certification of the trust that names you either as the trustee or the beneficiary of that trust. This is the bottom half of the direct deposit page. So if your account that you're having your payments directly deposited into is a joint account, the joint account holder, whoever else's name is on that account, needs to fill out section 5B. They need a wet signature, date, and fill out that short list of demographic information at the bottom. And then you are to complete 5C, so a wet signature and date at the bottom of the direct deposit page. Moving on to page 7, this is the option selection page. So if you are opting for option A, you're simply going to just check that box right there. The beneficiary information will be provided on page 9, and we'll go over that in a couple pages when we get there. And then the bottom half of page 7 has either option B or option C. So like option A, if you're choosing option B, you're going to check that box right there, and you're going to provide the beneficiary information on page 9. However, if you're choosing option C, you're going to check that box, but you're going to list your beneficiary information right on this page. Please complete it in its entirety. So the beneficiary's name, date of birth, their full social security number, and their relationship to you. If you were choosing option C, you would need to also include a certified birth certificate for your beneficiary. So that's the birth certificate with the raised seal. Please include that for your beneficiary. And if your beneficiary is your spouse, you should also be including a copy of your marriage certificate. And then you are going to sign and date the bottom, again, wet signatures with pen. Page 8 is the spousal acknowledgement page. So right at the top here, you're going to check your current marital status. So whether you are married or if you've been divorced, and if there is or is not a domestic relations order on file, if you're not currently married, or if you have been widowed and you have not remarried since. And then you are going to sign and date, wet signatures, no photocopies. The bottom of this page is the spousal acknowledgement section. Your spouse is essentially signing this page as an acknowledgement that they understand what option you selected on page 7. So your spouse and a witness needs to sign. They must both sign on the same date. And that date that they sign must be on or after the date that you sign page 7. Please keep those dates in mind. We're very finicky about those. If the dates are off and not followed precisely, we will send both pages 7 and 8 back to be redone. So please keep that in mind. And there is a little reminder on the side in case you forget about that. Now, page 9 is the beneficiary page. So this top part here, if you're choosing option A, you're going to name a beneficiary to receive your month of death payment. So again, as Jen explained, if you choose option A, whatever is due to you in your month of passing will be paid to a beneficiary that's named here. Please complete it in its entirety. Full social security number. You can name as many beneficiaries as you'd like. Please make sure, though, that the percentage that you're allocating to each beneficiary when they're totaled up equates to 100%. So if you're naming 3 different beneficiaries, 30%, 30%, 40%, that totals 100%, that is fine. If the percentage at the end does not equate to 100%, when all the beneficiaries are added up, this page will be sent back to you. Option B is completed in the same way that option A is completed above. Again, you can name as many people as you'd like. The percentages, when all the beneficiaries are added up, the total must equate to 100%. And at the bottom here for option A and B retirees only, you can name additional contingent beneficiaries. So if the primary beneficiary listed above has passed and you didn't name a new primary beneficiary, we would then look to your contingents. If there's not enough room on this page for any of the beneficiaries that you're going to name, just continue to print as many copies of this page as needed. This page right here is just an acknowledgement that you have completed the W-4P form or that you won't be completing the W-4P form. That is your tax form, and we're going to go over that. And you're also to acknowledge that you understand working after retirement and those limitations, which again, we'll go over. You're going to sign and date a wet signature here. And within the retirement application, we have provided a checklist. This is just a helpful tool for you as you go through the retirement application to make sure you've completed it in its entirety. You're attaching all the documentation that we're requesting from you. So that's just helpful for you to keep track as you're going through this process. So the W-4P form is your federal tax withholding form. This page right here is just an instructional page. We are not accountants, so we can't advise you on taxes. If the form at all is confusing to you or you're unsure how to fill it out, we do recommend that you consult an accountant while filling out this form. And this form right here is the actual W-4P form. So step 1 at the top, that absolutely needs to be completed in its entirety. So there's some demographic information. You must complete 1C, so indicate whether you're filing your taxes as single, as married, or as head of household. Steps 2, 3, and 4 are optional steps. And then you must sign and date the bottom, again, wet signatures. I do want to note, if you do complete step 2 and you put anything in there, please make sure any lines or numbers put on lines 2B1 or 2B2 are totaled in line 2B3. 2B3 is the line that we look at. That's the figure we're going to be entering in. So if you put something in 2B1 or 2B2 and don't total it in 2B3, we don't know if you wanted to leave that as 0. So just make sure that you're totaling that right there, or else we'll have to contact you or maybe send the form back. This is the top part of part 2. This is the first page. This is the only section of part 2 that you have to complete. It's just some demographic information. And then part 2 will go to your payroll to complete. Payroll should be giving part 2 back to you. You should be reviewing part 2 to make sure that it's complete, accurate, and that payroll has given you all of the applicable contracts, longevity pages, stipend pages that pertain to your salary information. Additionally, part 2, the very last page, payroll must sign off on it. Again, make sure part 2 is using wet signatures and they are not giving photocopies to you. Other than that, we're not going to go through part 2 just because you won't be completing it yourself. So once you get your completed part 2 back from payroll, make sure you're attaching all required documentation, birth certificates, marriage certificates, contracts, salary information. We highly suggest that you make a copy of your entire retirement application for your own records. And then you are going to submit both completed parts 1 and 2 together to the MTRS. Once we have reviewed your application, we'll notify you in writing as to whether the application is complete or if additional information is needed. All applications are processed on a first come, first served basis. We may need to we may need to contact your school department for additional information. If this causes any delay in the processing of your retirement application, we will communicate that to you. Please note that calculations do take up to 4 months to complete. And once your benefit calculation is complete, you will receive your notice of estimated retirement benefits letter, and it will be mailed to you. So again, another important reason to keep your address up to date. And that, as long as everything is okay, please review it for completeness. Everything is okay. You'll be all set to get your first payment. If you have any questions as to how the figures were calculated, you can certainly give us a call and actually speak to the retirement analyst that processed your retirement application. That will be, in regards to the retirement application, the final correspondence that you will get from us in regards to your retirement. Again, it takes approximately 4 months to process your paperwork. So your first check is likely to be received 4 months after you have submitted your retirement application. Regardless of when your first payment is issued, it will be retroactive back to your date of retirement as long as you have filed your application before your date of retirement or within 60 days from your date of separation from your service. Again, Jen went over that. So if you retire on June 30th, you have until August 29th to get a completed retirement application into us. And in that case, your first payment will be retroactive back to June 30th. Again, we've discussed that payments must be direct deposited by law. However, it's very possible that your first payment may be mailed as a paper check. We at the retirement system have a deadline to get all banking information in as of a certain deadline. If that deadline isn't met, then your first check may be a paper check. Again, another reason just to keep your address up to date with the system during this process. And then a final note on direct deposit, your monthly retirement allowance is paid on the last business day of every month. So I know that's probably a change for most of you. A lot of you are probably on 26 pay cycles, maybe 52. As a retiree, you will always be paid on the last business day of the month. And you will only receive a monthly statement when there's a change in the amount of your retirement allowance, when the MTRS needs to notify all retirees of an announcement, and every December we'll send you a year-end summary. And now time for a few questions.
Okay. Going back a little bit to retirement option C, what happens to the 9 to 11% with option C? Does that reduced amount come back if my husband dies before me? Does that reduction over the years get sent to me?
Nope. So if you choose option C, you're taking a 9 to 11% reduction approximately, and that reduction is based on your closest age as of your date of retirement and your beneficiary's closest age as of your date of retirement. So you take that reduction in hopes that if you pass before your beneficiary, they will then receive 2/3 of your monthly benefit for the rest of their life. If your beneficiary predeceases you, you don't retroactively get a payment for the reduction, and you won't have the option to name a new option C beneficiary. Your benefit will simply be recalculated as an option A.
Right. Is our retirement benefit taxed?
Yes, we will touch on taxes. Your retirement benefit is federally taxed. It's not subject to state tax in the state of Massachusetts.
Does Retirement Plus work after 20 or 30 years of service?
So the only way to receive a Retirement Plus enhancement is if you reach 30 or more years of service, and 20 of those 30 years must be membership service with the MTRS or with the Boston Retirement Board as a teacher.
Okay,
Hopefully that answers that.
I'm trying to interpret this next one. I'd like to buy back time that is within tier 1 dates. Can I do this to not be considered tier 2?
No, so if you are currently tier 2, if you've rendered service prior to 2012, that tier 2, that date that established tier 2 membership, if you purchase service that was rendered prior to that 2012 date, it won't change your tier status if it's just substituting or out of state or something like that. So your tier status will not be changed if you're purchasing service.
Does a paid medical leave paid via accrued sick time count as service time?
Yes, it does. So if you're on a paid medical leave, if it's fully paid, us on our end, we typically won't see any difference in your pay. You'll get full credit for that. If it is a partially paid medical leave, then you will receive proportional credit. So if you're on a 50% paid leave, you'll receive 50% service between those dates that you're on the paid leave.
My birthday is in August. Happy birthday. Can I retire in June at 80%?
That is all dependent on your age factor and your years of service in June. So if you need your age factor in August to reach your 80% benefit, then you're going to want to retire in August on your birthday. If you meet that 80% without retiring on your birthday, then you can retire in June, but that's dependent on your age and your years of service as of June.
One final question. I am retiring on July 3rd, 2025. I have submitted my part to the payroll, and they are telling me that they are waiting for our contract to be finalized so that it reflects the increase. Is it true that the MTRS would not verify salary once the application is submitted?
So if you're in the middle of a year that is settling your contract, the district, once the contract is settled, will have to send all updated salaries to us. We won't be able to use updated salaries before the contract is ratified. So once that's done, the district should be letting us know. So in the meantime, you can submit your retirement application using the salary information that you're currently being paid at. That's the current contract that you're working under. And once that contract is settled, an updated part 2 should be sent to us with updated contract language. So hopefully that helps.
Great. That's all I have for now.
All right, so moving on. Now we're going to get into some post-retirement issues. So the first one here is working after retirement. More and more people are headed back to the workforce after retiring. So if you are returning to employment in the private sector, employment in another state, whether public or private, so some people might retire from Massachusetts, but then go teach in New Hampshire, or if you're returning to employment within the federal government, there are no restrictions as to how much you can work and how much you can earn in these 3 different sectors right here. However, if you are returning to employment in the Massachusetts public sector, there are some limitations that you need to be aware of. The first of which is if you're returning to work with the same employer, you must be separated from service for 60 days before returning to that same employer. This is waived if you're retiring at age 62 or older, or if you are retiring at your 80% maximum benefit. For many people retiring June 30th, the summer will fulfill that 60 days separation requirement for you, and then you'd be able to return in the fall. Additionally, you cannot exceed 1,200 hours in a calendar year as a retiree working in the public sector. And your post-retirement earnings cannot exceed the difference between the salary of which the position from which you retired and the amount of your annual pension. After you've been retired for one full January to December calendar year, that limit is increased by $15,000. That was a mouthful, so we are going to go through that calculation on the next slide so you can see how your earnings limitations are calculated. However, I do want to point out that please be mindful that these restrictions are calculated on a calendar year. So as teachers, administrators, you're used to working a contract year that spans over 2 calendar years. So for example, right now, we're obviously in the 24-25 school year. If you plan on retiring June 30th of 25 and then returning to work the 25-26 school year, these allowable earnings and time limitations, you probably will not meet them when working September of 25 to December of 25. So you should be okay there, roughly. And it's going to reset January 1st of 2026. So you continue that 25-26 school year, you're working January to June, you've decided you want to go back the 26-27 school year. Now, when you return in September of 26 and work September of 26 to December of 26, you might start to meet your limitations. So be mindful of that your work year is spanning over 2 calendar years. These limitations are calculated on a calendar year. So this is how an example of how your earnings cap is calculated. So Mary Educator retired June 30th of 2024 from a position that paid her $77,000 per year. So what she's going to do is she's going to go back to her school district and ask, if I didn't retire and I were going to return the 24-25 school year, what would my salary be? And it's important to note that salary includes any pensionable earnings such as regular longevity, coaching, contracted stipends, whatever Mary was earning in that final year, she wants to see what she would have been paid for that position and those stipends had she returned 24-25. So the district tells her if you didn't retire, your salary would have been $79,000. We're now going to subtract Mary's gross annual MTRS pension, which was $50,175. And Mary's allowable earnings for calendar year 2024 is $28,825. Beginning January 1st of 2026, again, she has to be retired for one full January to December calendar year. So because she's retiring in June, it's really a year and a half from her date of retirement. Mary may then earn an additional $15,000 per calendar year. This is a one-time increase of $15,000. It's not each calendar year she gets an additional increase of $15,000. One time will be added on. There are different rules for working after retirement in the event of a critical shortage. So a critical shortage means that the school district has posted the position, they're having a hard time finding a qualified candidate. The district must apply for a critical shortage with the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. If it is approved, it is a 1-year waiver. It is not for an indefinite period of time. After that 1 year, the district must reapply for that critical shortage waiver if necessary. If the school district is granted a critical shortage waiver, then the retiree filling that role may work without restrictions. So there's no limitation to the number of hours that can be worked or what the retiree may earn for the duration of that critical shortage waiver. Retirement plus retirees must wait 2 years to be eligible to fulfill a critical shortage position. Some additional notes about working after retirement. Any service paid with public funds is subject to these restrictions. So whether you're paid with state funds, funds from a city or town, a county, and whether you're working as a consultant or a leased employee in Massachusetts, those are still subject to the times and earning restrictions. So please be mindful of that. If you are approaching your limitations, so whether you're approaching your number of hours worked or your earnings limitation, you may elect to waive or freeze your benefit. And I also want to note that it's whatever limitation you hit first, you must stop working. So it's not both limitations must be met, it's either or. And if you exceed your allowable limits, the MTRS or your employer must recover all excess earnings from you. The MTRS doesn't keep track of your earnings and your hours worked. That's up to you and your employer. There is a helpful worksheet on our website that will help you gauge whether you're approaching your limitations. So I recommend that if you are somebody returning to work after retirement, that you use that worksheet with your employer just to keep track of that. So moving on to taxes, I know somebody had a question about this before, so we kind of touched on it, but your retirement allowance is not subject to state income tax. It is, however, federally taxed. So that W-4P form that we talked about pertains to your federal taxes. If you intend to move out of state, you definitely want to check with the Department of Revenue in that state to make sure that your retirement or to determine whether or not your retirement allowance is subject to state income tax in that state. So for example, if you plan on moving up to Maine, I believe your retirement allowance would be subject to state income tax in that state. Usually the warmer states, you are not subject to state income tax. Jen did touch a little bit previously before that your annuity savings account may have post-tax dollars in there. So your annuity savings account, just so we're all on the same page, is your account with the MTRS. It's all your contributions that you've paid over the years, any payments you've made for service purchases plus interest, that's your annuity savings account. There are two ways that you could have post-tax dollars in your annuity savings account. The first way is if you started teaching or became a member of a mass public retirement system prior to 1988, the deductions that you made to that system at that time prior to 1988 were made on an after-tax basis. The second way that you can have post-tax funds in your account is if you paid for a service purchase and you paid with a personal check, something like that, that would be considered post-tax money. We've kept track of your pre and post-tax money in your account throughout the years. So you'll have a slightly reduced taxable earnings, which will be noted on your 1099s. And your 1099-R is your tax form. So it's essentially a retiree's version of a W-2. It's what you will use to file taxes every year, and they are mailed by January 31st of each year. And every other year, along with your 1099 form, we will send you a benefit verification form. This is a form simply just to ensure that you are the person receiving your pension. It requires a signature by you and a witness and will be sent back to the MTRS. And there will be instructions during a benefit verification year as to what to do with that form when it is mailed. So I know Jen mentioned right at the outset of today's presentation that we are aware that the legislature voted to repeal the two offsets, the WEP and the GPO. However, it needs to go to Biden first to be signed into law, which as of this morning has not yet been done. So we are going to talk about the offsets as they currently stand right now. Obviously, that could be changing in the near future. As soon as we know anything, you guys will know, and make sure you're just keeping up to date on that. So the first offset is the windfall elimination provision, or the WEP, and that applies to your own Social Security earnings. You are exempt from the WEP if you are eligible to retire from the MTRS prior to January 1st, 1986. Again, this is a really hard date to beat, so most people will probably be subject to this offset in regards to their own Social Security. And this offset is dependent on how many years of substantial earnings you have with Social Security. So if you have 20 or less years of substantial earnings with Social Security, we generally say that you can expect to take home roughly about half of your Social Security benefit with a maximum offset of $587 per month. If you have 21 or more years of substantial earnings with Social Security, that's where it starts to help you a little bit. The offset may not be as great as 50%. It may be reduced a little bit. And then for those with 30 or more years of substantial earnings with with Social Security, would be eligible to collect both their full Social Security benefit and their pension. That's a very rare instance because usually if you're paying into the retirement system, you're not paying into Social Security. An example of somebody who may get both is a vocational teacher who's, let's say they're teaching plumbing, paying into the MTRS for all those years, but they have a plumbing business on the side. So they're also paying into Social Security for all those years. That's an example of somebody who may be able to receive both. Again, very uncommon. And the next offset applies to your ability to collect spousal benefits through Social Security. This is the government pension offset, or the GPO. You're exempt from the GPO if you are eligible to retire prior to December 1st, 1982, which again is an even more difficult date to beat. So people will probably be subject to this as well. And the way this is calculated is if 2/3 of your public pension is greater than what your spousal benefit would be, then you would not be able to collect your spousal benefit from Social Security. I think it's important to note that these offsets only apply to your ability to collect Social Security. Your pension will never be offset, will never be reduced. It only applies to your Social Security benefit. And additionally, these offsets don't apply to survivors or beneficiaries of public retirees. So if you're somebody who chooses option C, maybe you name your spouse as your option C beneficiary, that spouse is eligible for their own Social Security earnings. Their Social Security won't be offset because now they're receiving a monthly benefit through the pension system as your beneficiary. As Jen touched upon earlier, even if you're subject to either one of these offsets, you may still qualify for Medicare on your own or through your spouse. So make sure you're contacting Social Security before your 65th birthday to determine whether you're Medicare eligible, when you need to apply for Part B, and maybe figure out if these offsets affect you and how they may affect you. And finally, we're talking about cost of living adjustments. So we're ending on a bit of a high note. Mass public retirees are eligible for COLAs after one full fiscal year of retirement, so one full July to June. They are part of the budgetary process and they must be granted by the legislature. As long as I can remember, they have been granted by the legislature, so it is pretty common. And the amount is currently 3% or the CPI, whichever is less, on the first $13,000 of your retirement allowance, for a maximum increase of $390 per year. So if you're making more than $13,000 in your retirement, as long as the COLA is approved, you can expect to receive $390. It won't be a lump sum payment once it's approved. It will be divvied up per check. That concludes today's seminar. We again want to thank you for taking the time out of your holiday schedule and your break to spend time with us to learn about retirement. We hope that you feel knowledgeable and ready to start the retirement process. And we will also be sticking around to answer some additional questions.
We have a couple in the chat.
Okay,
Take them.
sure.
If I took a paid FMLA leave, does that count as creditable service?
If you took a paid leave, as long as it's fully paid, you will receive full credit for that medical leave. Again, if the leave is partially paid, then you'll receive proportional credit. So if you were on a 50% paid leave for 1 year, you would receive 50% credit for that time.
Do the limits on money able to be earned in retirement only apply to jobs in education or to any form of employment?
Any form of employment in which you are paid with public funds. So if you go work for a city or town, or maybe lifeguard at a state reservation, anything paid with public funds, you will be subject to the time and earnings limitations.
Great. I quit, excuse me, I quit teaching in August at age 66. How does that affect retirement paperwork? I married at 18 and never worked as an educator under my maiden name. Do I still need a marriage certificate as a widow?
If you, I'm sorry, can you repeat the name change portion?
Sure. I married at 18 and never worked as an educator under my maiden name. Do I still need a marriage certificate as a widow?
Yes, so if you have any name change, regardless of when it happened, what name you're teaching out under, if you were born and given one name and changed your name at any point throughout your life, we would need some type of documentation of that name change. If it was through marriage, then we would need a copy of that marriage certificate. Regardless of if you are now widowed, which I'm sorry to hear, but we would still need a copy of that marriage certificate for proof of name change.
Jumping around here a little bit, but there seemed to be a little bit of confusion about why a beneficiary was needed for option A. Can you just talk about that for a moment?
Yes, so option A, it is a little confusing. So if you choose option A, and let's say you pass on the 15th of the month, we as the retirement system still owe you 15 days of pay. That is your month of death benefit. That has to be paid to someone. So we do ask that you name an option A beneficiary to pay that whatever number of days to somebody. So I hope that clears that up.
Can I retire on my birthday in October to get another year added to my age factor?
So you can retire on your birthday. The MTRS has no issue with that. And we will use the higher age factor as Jen touched upon before. If you are already at age 65, you don't want to retire on your 66th birthday. That's not going to help you any. But if you're under age 65 or you're going to be hitting age 65 on your birthday, yes, you can retire on your birthday to increase that age factor.
Do you need a birth certificate for the beneficiary if you choose option B?
If you choose option A or B, whatever beneficiaries you name, we do not need a birth certificate. We only need a birth certificate, a certified birth certificate for your option C beneficiary.
Can you change your beneficiary after you retire?
For options A and option B, you can change your beneficiary at any time. For option C, you cannot change your beneficiary once you have retired. And again, if that beneficiary predeceases you, so you won't have the option to name another option C beneficiary, your benefit will then be recalculated as an option A from their date of death moving forward.
Are there any requirements as to who can serve as a witness on the form? For example, an adult family member?
Anybody can serve as a witness for the spousal acknowledgement form as long as they are over the age of 18.
My wife retired in 2015. She said she was told that her retirement benefits would end in 20 years. Is that possible?
No, you will continue to be paid your retirement until you pass. They will not run out in 20 years.
I think you've answered this one already, but what is the time frame for the last school payment and the first retirement payment?
The last school payment and the first, so typically it's 4 months to process a retirement application. So if you're somebody that's retiring in June, your last payment is received in June, it's possible that you could receive your retirement if you've filed your retirement 4 months before June, then you'll actually receive your payment in July. So it also depends on when you file. But your first check is typically 4 months after the date you filed.
One last question. It's a clarification question. Should I send part 1 to payroll in my district first? After payroll finishes part 2, should I then mail everything to the MTRS? And should I keep copies of all the documents?
So you want to fill out part 1. You can start that as soon as you'd like. Submit part 2 to your district. They'll tell you how long it will take. They should be submitting part 2 back to you. So whether they mail it to you, you pick it up, they need to submit the original back to you. You should review everything, make copies of the entire application for your records, and then send the original application, all wet signatures with the appropriate documentation to the MTRS.
Okay, so it looks like it might be the last one in the chat. Is the federal tax the only deduction besides a health insurance plan?
Yes, your benefit will only be federally taxed within Massachusetts unless you move out of state. Then you need to inquire about state tax, so that would potentially be an additional deduction. And then whatever health insurance, dental plans, things like that would be deducted from your pension benefit too.
That's great. Thank you very much. It looks like that is the end of the published questions, and we do still have MTRS staff answering questions individually in the chat. But that's all I have for you right now.
All right, thank you.
Thanks. So that's going to conclude our presentation today. I'd like to thank both Jen and Kaylee for their excellent presentation and the information and answering questions. We'd also like to thank the MTRS staff who are chatting in the next room with members of the audience and still answering questions. We will certainly be here for a while with the chat room open. Again, you can always go to our website, mass.gov/MTRS, and contact us via email. We have a contact form and we'll be happy to get back to you as soon as we can. And thank you very much. Have a happy holidays, happy new year, and have a great rest of the day.
Thank you.